Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of House to Home. This is a podcast brought to you by Family Policy Alliance Foundation. My name is Grace Youngson, and as always, I am alongside Joseph Kohm, my co-host. And today's podcast is an exciting one. Yay, we have some good news. We're going to dive into a major shift in global sport. The IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee, is reportedly preparing to ban transgender women and athletes with differences of sex development from competing in female events. So this is huge. But the thing is, this isn't just about elite athletic sport. This is about girls everywhere. This is about fairness. This is about parental rights. And we at FPAF are personally excited about how this ties into our Save Girls Sports campaign. So, Joseph, can you tell us a bit more about this story?
Yeah, I would love to, Grace. Clearly, I'm very excited because we are talking about the Olympics today. So this was an excuse to break out my USA hockey jersey. We have Winter Olympic Games coming up here in about 3 months' time. We're recording on November 11th on Veterans Day. About 3 months, we have Winter Olympic Games in Milan in Italy. So all the Olympic sports are back. And that's why this story is so huge. It is a massive signal from one of the world's most powerful governing bodies of all sport around the world. So the importance of it really cannot be overstated, and we hope to highlight that in this episode for our audiences, to highlight how significant this is, what it means for Olympic sports, and for the whole issue of protecting girls' sports, this civil rights struggle that FPA has been a leader in for a number of years now, because there is other news going on with this issue. This is just a huge milestone. And then for the future, what it means for the impact of our Save Girls Sports campaign here at FPA. We believe this is a flag on the moon moment that we've reached here. The IOC has sided with us that girls' sports need to be saved and protected just for women. So thank you again, Grace, to this story. So you can see why I'm wearing this hockey sweater. The IOC, which, as you said, is the International Olympic Committee. So if you don't know anything about sports, that's fine. We're going to make sure this podcast is just as relatable to you as just everyone else who loves sports, including me. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, is the governing body for all Olympic sports. So every 2 years we have a set of Olympic Games. Every 4 Februaries we have the Winter Olympic Games, and every 4 Julys we have the Summer Olympic Games. The Summer Olympics are events like swimming, track and field, and baseball and softball. And the Winter Olympics are sports like men's and women's ice hockey, but also downhill skiing, snowboarding, the luge, sledding, all fun things like that. So the IOC oversees all of the Olympics. And that's why it's such a powerful body, because the Olympics are some of the most watched sporting events ever throughout the world. I mean, the whole world takes a pause every 4 Februaries or every 4 Julys and just watches the Olympics, because despite what our elites like to tell us, most people are still quite patriotic. They want their country to win. And of course, Grace, no offense to you, but America is the best country. We always dominate both Olympics, and we're going to soon. So we've been in this huge fight as a country, as 50 states, to save girls' sports, to protect sports that belong to just biological girls, for just them, and not transgender women, which are men. So the big news of this story is the IOC agrees with us now. So recently the IOC brought on a new president. Her name is Kirsty Coventry. She's a former politician from Zimbabwe. And she was an Olympic athlete herself. I think she was a rower. And she ordered a scientific review of the evidence, like we've used prior reviews in our advocacy for Save Girls Sports laws. And it was brought on by a new team with a new doctor. And what they concluded is that biological men, even if they call themselves transgender women, do in fact have significant physical advantages over women, even if they have not gone through quote unquote male puberty. And that therefore the women's sports categories should be restricted to just be for biological women in order to protect the integrity of women's sports. So the story is basically around a leak, which is that in light of this scientific review, the IOC is going to implement this policy that girls' sports are just for girls, which is dramatic. And even this new president, Kirsty Coventry of the IOC, she said, and it's a quote directly from the Telegraph's version of this story: "We must protect the female category first and foremost to ensure fairness." And Grace, this is one of the most gratifying things about this story is that we just had the IOC give an FPA talking point to support this new policy. And throughout this story, you'll see the messaging from the IOC, from the medical board. And we'll link to this story, by the way, in our show notes. It's all FPA talking points. These are talking points we wrote all those years ago when we were the primary on-the-ground lobbyist in the state of Idaho, passing the very first state Save Girls sports bill. Since then, 26 states have passed Save Girls sports bills using these basic, true talking points that men and women are just different biologically, generally speaking. Men have inherent physical advantages over women, and that to protect these civil rights accomplishments for women in having their own categories, for them to remain fair, they have to be just for biological women. So just a couple more notes on this story. The IOC previously had left these decisions to the governing bodies of these individual sports. So you got for people to conceptualize this, the IOC is over all Olympics, summer and winter, all the different sports. They supervise all of it. For those individual sports, though, so you have in the Winter Olympics coming up, you have ice hockey, you have skiing, you have the luge, figure skating. Each of those individual sports has its own governing body. So here I am wearing a hockey sweater. The global hockey governing body is the IIHF, the International Ice Hockey Federation, combined with the NHL because it's such a big sport here in North America, but most of the IIHF. Previously, the IOC had left these decisions about men and women's sports to bodies like the IIHF just to govern the sport of ice hockey. Well, now the IOC has decided we're going to exert our power here to take this back and establish this rule across the board: no more men and women's sports. That's a big thing. It's huge because not all of these governing bodies are created equal, and they can individually be sued over their decisions here. And this is such a moment to highlight our Save Girls Sports campaign. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but I do want to establish to our audience, this is what you did by enabling us to get to 26 states that have passed Save Girls Sports bills, 2 cases pending before the Supreme Court, multiple smaller victories around the globe, like, for example, the rugby governing body made this rule a couple of years ago. Now we've hit the IOC, the absolute upper echelon of global sports. I think it's the second most watched sporting event every 2 years after the World Cup is the Olympics. This is what you have done. This is the impact of our supporters. And then just the final notes on the story is that this policy won't officially be in place by the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan, Italy. But the signaling before then is huge because it will be in place by the 2028 Summer Olympics, which are being held in none other place than Los Angeles, California. And California, as our audience knows, has not passed a Save Girls Sports bill. They are not one of those 26 states. So here you have the IOC bringing Save Girls Sports into California when they haven't even taken this positive stand for women. I mean, like I said, Grace, it's hard to overstate the drama of this story. I'm sorry I've rambled about it, but I think those details were important for our audience to know.
I agree. And I think, considering my first reaction to this, my first reaction was, wow, this is huge. Like, the Olympics, in my mind, is kind of, the top sporting event. If you win at the Olympics, you're like world champion, And so for such a huge event like that to be recognizing this is awesome. And also there's just so much prestige that comes with the Olympics. And I think my other reaction was kind of like, well, why hasn't this been done sooner? Thank God it's happening now, but shouldn't this have been done sooner? And especially as a woman, I think that it's very sad, very unfortunate that some women who have worked their whole lives to try and reach that world's best had to forfeit it to a man in the women's category. So thank God that we're now seeing this, and it's really, really exciting. I think, as you said, Joseph, I believe that we will see a lot more local ramifications of this because it's kind of like, well, if the Olympics is doing that, how can you be a serious sporting competition and not do that? So, yeah, so really, really exciting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we should get into that briefly here, Grace, about why this hasn't happened before and just the tragedy that did lead to this. I mean, we didn't get here with no costs. This was not scot-free. Women paid a serious price to finally get us to this point, and we should acknowledge that tragedy. So why do we need this, right? Why didn't this happen sooner? Well, listeners, if they do follow sports, they probably know last year in 2024 we had Summer Olympic Games in Paris, the city of light, and there was one political story that really dominated those games, overshadowed even the United States and LeBron James winning a gold medal in basketball, which is the female boxing category in the Olympics. So boxing is a Summer Olympic sport. And there's a terrible story where two biological men won the gold medals in two women's boxing categories because boxing is parsed out by weight class. So there are multiple gold medals and medals given out depending on your weight class that you compete in. And the most prevalent one of these two men was a man named Iman Khalif. He's an Algerian fighter, and so much is still unknown about Khalif's background, which is amazing, Grace. Here we are in 2024, 2025, and we're still trying to get a lot of details right about some of these athletes. But what we do know is Iman Khalif is a man. He's a biological man who was allowed by the IOC and the boxing governing bodies to compete in the women's category, and he ended up winning a women's gold medal. Think of all the women that had to fight this man just for one thing. What an indignity and piece of unspeakable violence that is. But also think of all the blood, sweat, and tears those women had to sacrifice just to get there. I mean, imagine just having the chance to fight for a medal in the Olympics, to have this shot at immortality, and to have your fairness cheated like this. That's what happened. And furthermore, this drove a lot of confusion at the time. So at the time, I was in the United Kingdom. I was in Cambridge at an event with some allies of FPA called the Discovery Institute, which is a scientific organization. So I'm at an event with them, watching some of these fights, talking with these scientists about this. And, we argued about things like whatever disorder of sexual development Iman Khalif has, because he does. That's why he was raised as a woman in Algeria, as far as we know. But he's a DSD that gave him all the physical advantages of being a male without believing in a place like Algeria that he actually was a male. And we had all these scientific discussions, but at the end of the day, what the Olympics serves to do is it highlights these stark physical differences, generally speaking, between men and women. Because, I mean, I'm going to the Milan Olympics in February to watch a couple hockey games, and I'm going to go to a women's game and I'm going to go to a men's game. And even if you're watching in person or over the TV, just watching those games back to back, the difference is just so stark. So here we are sitting in Cambridge, me and my Discovery Institute friends and allies, watching this boxing match. Like, we can argue all day about the science and what this really means, but just look at this fight. He's beating her to a pulp, easily winning the gold medal. I think that's what finally pushed the IOC in this direction, and it's worth just highlighting that tragedy that we had to get there. I mean, thank God we did. The suffering of women like the people that had to fight Imam Khalif wasn't in vain, but that's at least a big part of how we got here. And the Olympics serves that positive purpose of highlighting these differences between men and women that are worth acknowledging and therefore worth protecting and investing in fairness for women.
Totally. I think it's important to point that out that it took that for us to get here. I think it's also really sad that it took that for us to get here. We should have more respect for women, for girls in sports than to have to let it get to a horrible situation until we act. And really, when you look at us here at FPAF, we started messaging on this issue before there was all of these horrible stories. We saw this from the start. We saw the fact that this was unfair and the problems that this could cause. And something else to touch on at the start, I mentioned how this isn't just about huge high profile athletes competing and winning, gold medals. This is about the everyday girls as well, who are competing in sporting events at school, who are learning um, important skills for life from being able to compete in these things. And then we're sending messaging that actually, this doesn't have to be fair for you. This isn't really that important. And for some of these girls, it's going to mean that they don't even want to compete. And so this is really such a far-reaching issue. So it really is awesome to see the fact that the Olympics is taking a stand. And to have that quote from the president of this committee is really quite amazing too. And really, I think it's a time to thank the Lord for this, that someone in such a great position of influence is seeing the light. And it's encouraging for us everywhere here across America to take that forward and stand for this in our local areas too.
Yeah, that's a great Grace, and that last point I think is something we should emphasize to our audience is standing for this in your local area, because we mentioned the 2028 games are coming to California. It's hard for me to imagine that they will have passed a Safe Girl Sports law by then. I don't want to limit our great God by any stretch, and we're going to keep working for a Safe Girl Sports law in the Golden State in the meantime. But in all likelihood, by 2028, California will still be allowing boys to compete in girls' athletics up and down the state at every level of education. So that's why this is important, is because I want our audience to see the impact they're having. We mentioned this at the top of the show, but our listeners, our supporters, you are the reason why FPA has been able to work as a convener in this massive global coalition to get 26 states to pass Safe Girl Sports laws, to arrive at this point where the world's second biggest, probably, governing sports body has passed a Safe Girl Sports policy. You're the reason that we've gotten two lawsuits over these Safe Girls Sports state laws pending before the Supreme Court right now at the time of recording. And that's why if you're in a state that doesn't have one of these laws, yes, you should support your local state family policy council in that state as they advocate for one of these laws. But also, you should support a policy like this in your school board as well. It's not advocacy for Grace and I to tell you this is a good policy at your local school board level, because those votes are nonpartisan. So if you're listening to this and you think, well, I'm here in New York or Minnesota, I can't make a difference. Yes, you can. If you get in front of your school board and signal this, hey, the IOC is doing this, why aren't we? We need to get in line with the rest of the world. It also communicates to your state houses that the people they represent in their states expect this of them. They expect them to side with women in this great civil rights struggle. This is what we've achieved so far. You're the one that's going to enable us to continue to achieve so much, and you can do so much at your local level. This connection is a direct line between what happens at your local level, your school boards, your city councils, all the way up to the IOC, where gold medals are won and lost. You impact that with what you choose to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is an opportunity. This is an open door, and just kind of like a completely different issue. But when we had the fall of Roe v. Wade, it was an open
Hmm.
door for us to go out and keep winning, and that is exactly the same with this. It's an open door, and so it's very very exciting. Um, but Joseph, I don't know if you could talk about a little bit more, what you mentioned this earlier, but what are kind of the risks of not having a policy like this in place?
Yeah, I think the risks are girls are just going to be in more danger for one thing. I think that should be priority number one, is physical safety, right? It is dangerous for girls to compete with men. We have numerous examples of this. I mean, we talked about the Iman Khalif from last year's Olympics. That's a very high profile story. But if you cruise the internet, you'll find numerous examples and videos of girls who have been forced to compete against boys at the K through 12 level. And whether it's volleyball or basketball, you take a bad block from a man or you get spiked by a volleyball, and that's a career-ending injury. We've seen this. I mean, we can refer the audience to cases of this. And I've said for those watching, if you're listening, I'm wearing a USA Hockey sweater here. The reality is, if you play hockey as a girl against a man, your chances of injury just skyrocket. So that's number one, which is one of the main reasons FPA brought this campaign in the first place. But also, it's just a measure of fairness. Women's rights has always been a civil rights struggle, women's rights and opportunities. Title IX was a huge victory for that when it was passed with the U.S. Civil Rights Code that guaranteed these equal opportunities for women. And at that time, transgenderism was not a thing. No one had ever heard of that. So the idea that when the federal legislators were passing Title IX and enacting it, they clearly meant these opportunities to be reserved for actual biological women. That was a great achievement for the women's civil rights struggle. And this openness of the world and anti-family forces to so willingly redefine women to include men who think they are women, their gender identity. It puts all of that at risk. Their civil rights, all those victories that we've achieved, all those opportunities for women that they've deserved for a long time, that's all at risk now, being stolen by men. We've seen that. The infamous picture of the UPenn swimmer Leah Thomas, who's a man, standing with the NCAA championship, towering above Riley Gaines, great hero of this movement, who was a swimmer for the University of Kentucky. She had to look on while this man took her national championship. And all these years later, people like Riley Gaines are still being pilloried by elected representatives like the New York representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Just this past week on Twitter, attacked Riley Gaines, called her a slow swimmer, instead of highlighting this very obvious fact that she got beat by a man. So all this is the real risk, is your girls could work so hard for so long for these opportunities that they deserve by federal law, only to have it stolen from them by men and by boys. That's what's at risk here, and that's why Save Girls Sports is not just a women's rights movement, it's a parental rights movement. Parents need this right to protect and empower their kids and give them, open up for them the opportunities they deserve.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And it kind of ties into our Let Parents Parent campaign as well, which our audience, you can learn more about that on our website too. But Joseph, I think we're going to go to a quick break for a promo video, correct?
Yes, let's go to a break, Grace.
Calling all conservative school board members and candidates. If you are a school board member or candidate who wants to use your position to honor God, protect children, and preserve parents' rights, let me introduce you to the School Board Academy. Hosted by Family Policy Alliance Foundation, the School Board Academy offers conservatives the training they need to truly make a difference. Each School Board Academy session contains relevant resources and proven strategies for success, including more than 24 model policies on the most pressing issues facing school boards today. This is not just another school board training program. In fact, it's the nation's only biblically based training for school board members, taught completely online. After the School Board Academy, graduates receive ongoing support, training, and collaboration with a nationwide network of like-minded school board members. Don't delay in applying. Applications and more information are now available on our website, familypolicyalliance.com/school board. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Well, welcome back. I want to open this with a quote from Mara Yamachi. She's actually a two-time Olympic marathoner from the UK. And she said in an interview in 2024, she said the acceptable number of males in the female category is 0. And I think it's important that we're listening to, the actual women who are competing in the Olympics. This is not some thing that's being passed with the athletes being in opposition to it. This is what they want. This is fairness. And so I think that quote really just highlights the importance of this. So, Joseph, I know that we always in this show like to give a fair say to the other side. And so would you outline, what the other side might say with regards to this?
Absolutely. And I think it's appropriate to start this segment with that quote from Mara, because that is the standard. There is no mushy middle here. There is no room for error when girls' lives and civil rights are on the line. The acceptable number of men in the female categories of sports is 0. So it's important that we start from that standard when we talk about these counter arguments, because they do deserve consideration and engagement and rebuke. But we want to make sure we prepare for them and start from that proper place. I want to start with the end in mind. So one common counter-argument you get is that this is about inclusion, that transgender athletes should have the same rights to participate in sports, and that these blanket bans are discriminatory against transgender athletes, that they're, I guess the term is transphobic. I find that just totally unconvincing, not because not because I have anything personal or any kind of distaste for transgender people, but just that if this is what the science says, and it does, the IOC now agrees with us that the science says men have these inherent physical advantages over women, then someone's personal feelings about their identity shouldn't really matter, because when it comes to fairness, like your feelings about who you are doesn't have any impact on the fairness of the game. The science does. And we're not saying at the end of the day that transgender athletes should not compete in sports, period. We are saying just compete in the category that aligns with your actual biological sex. So this is how you reflect dignity and fairness for everyone in sports. Transgender women are biological men. Just compete in the males category. If that sounds harsh to you, don't pick the bone with me, pick it with science. That's what the science says. And then we're not going to compromise on the fairness that we owe to women. So, that's why I think it's the civil rights issue. This is the newest phase of that fight for girls. So our concern is not exclusion of people. We just want fairness, because girls and men deserve that. What do you think, Grace? How else would you respond to that challenge?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. And I think that, you know, what you just said as well with regards to the scientific side of things, it kind of makes me think about going through drug tests before you compete. That's only fair that everyone has to go through the same drug tests and make sure that no one has some kind of advantage. And and it's like, okay, we're not. Someone might say, oh, I want this drug to make me feel better or whatever. And it's like, well, actually, the science says that this is going to give you an advantage. And it's exactly the same with this. It's nothing personal. It's just that if we really care about making sports fair, which is the whole point of competition, that it's supposed to be fair. I mean, there's meticulous lengths that are gone to make sure things are fair. I also think about when you watch tennis or when you watch games like that involve, it's very, very important the position of where the ball lands in terms of whether someone gets a point or not. There are such meticulous cameras that can capture, like, it can be so close, like a hairline off or in or out, you know? We really care about fairness, and then to just kind of toss this out of the water seems kind of crazy. And so
Yeah.
I think that would be part of the way I would also respond is, across the board, this is a normal thing that we would consider scientific advantages, whatever it is. This is nothing that should be considered transphobic or personal towards another person. And so
The,
really, I think as well, this is kind of moves like this. Well, I think in here we would say the other side might say, well, this is a move to appease pressure from certain groups. The first way that I would think about that is like, well, I actually think about it the other way around, that there's pressure from the LGBTQ group to allow these people to compete in a category where they have a physical advantage. But, you know, it would be very right that there would be some pressure coming from women, coming from parents who care about protecting their children, from women who care about the fact of having this fair. And so, yeah, I would love to hear a bit more of your thoughts on that too,
Yeah,
Joseph.
I think you make a great point there, Grace, in that argument doesn't give credit to the right places. So if the argument is, well, the IOC is just doing this to cave to political pressure, first of all, I think the implicit notion there is that they're caving to President Trump, right? Here they are coming to America in 2028, so you better get in President Trump's good graces. Now, President Trump does care about this issue, but that is ultimately disingenuous because it's not giving credit to the right places. The Save Girls Sports movement has been driven by, frankly, the listeners to this program, to House to Home, which is parents, female athletes, local leaders. This is the groundswell grassroots movement that is purely motivated and has driven this movement to get to this point where half of the United States have these laws. There's 2 pending Supreme Court cases. The IOC has sided with us. That was driven by parents and their daughters and their coaches. Those are the people who deserve the credit for getting us here. I mean, if the IOC is caving to those people, what else are they here for? That's who pays their bills. That's who they pay fees to so that their kids can compete in the sports with these governing bodies. That's the whole point, is that you listen to the people that you serve and are there to protect ultimately. These governing bodies are supposed to help protect the athletes. So if you cave to parents and to female athletes, I mean, I think they did what they should do. And even if it was about Trump, Grace, even if it was about him, I mean, sure, that's not the right reason to put this policy in, but this policy is the right policy. So even if they got to the right policy for the wrong reasons, I still think that's a dramatic win because of the actual positive effects it's going to have for real life people, for real female athletes who deserve this protection. I mean, right place, wrong time, I guess. You got here for the wrong reason. Who cares? You still got here. That was the whole point of the movement. So either way you slice it, I think that argument fails because they defied the bad actors and they ruled in favor of the people that are ultimately they're there to protect. So any final thoughts to add to that counter argument, Grace?
No, I think you did a great job at summing that up. I don't have any final thoughts.
I get that one a lot in the state houses when I'm doing our work for FBA on the other side of the house from us, Grace. But this has been a great episode. I appreciate your thoughts on this issue as well, especially being a female and an athlete. Your voice has a lot to say in this, Grace. So I'm honored to talk about this issue with you. And just to our audience, I'll just leave you with reiterating our theme of gratitude to you for your support and for empowering FPA and the movement to protect girls' sports to get to this dramatic point. And I would just encourage people, we had a lot of bones to pick in the Olympics back in 2024 when they allowed Iman Khalif to compete in the women's category. A lot of people were boycotting. I understood that. The Olympics are doing the right thing now. And so I would just encourage people, when people do the right thing, you should support them for it. So the Winter Olympics are coming up in Milan, Italy in February 2026. Tune in and watch. Support them for doing the right thing, including when they come to Los Angeles in 2028. Show them your support, that you're glad they did this, and this makes the Olympics worth supporting and worth enjoying now, because I'm sure going to enjoy it. USA is going to dominate, as we always do. And Grace, well, I think Great Britain, we can allow them to come in second in the medal count. So thank you to our supporters for enabling us to get here, for listening to this program. Please share it with your friends if you like it and you want to celebrate with us. And thanks for supporting House to Home as a program. We're here every Wednesday morning with weekly episodes covering news like this to show the impact you can have and to help equip you and your family to talk about these issues at your dinner table and in your day-to-day life. So if you like us, please follow us. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Pods. You can subscribe to the FPA YouTube channel where all our video episodes are uploaded. You can see my beautiful USA hockey sweater. And you can also subscribe to Family Policy Alliance on our social media. Our handle is @family_policy. But thank you again. We'll be back next Wednesday with another new episode of House to Home.